Even the World Bank estimates that 20% of foreign aid is lost to corruption each year.
Basically, what this industry has told America, that if you are conservative, if you're Republican, if you're independent, you're a moderate Democrat, which is the vast majority of America, there's no place for you to work in this industry.
We're paying for our own noose.
They are encouraging illegal immigration into the United States by funding and making it easier for people to make their way north.
What country does aid not stop immediately under Leahy, except for Israel?
And you're not selling me right now. I hate to tell you, you're not selling me.
But there's no incentive for these countries to reform economically as long as they see billions and billions of dollars coming in from remittances.
The World Bank, even the World Bank, estimates that 20% of foreign aid is lost to corruption each year, and that 30% of foreign aid fails to reach its intended target. The committee has a long history of conducting oversight on how few guardrails are in place when it comes to vetting contractors and grantees, leaving foreign assistance vulnerable to exploitation and undermining U.S. strategic goals. Today, we'll examine whether, and if so, how the U.S. government ensures that taxpayer-funded foreign aid achieves its objectives while safeguarding those dollars from being diverted to unintended or unlawful purposes. I'm pleased to introduce our witnesses today. First of all, going across here, Jim Richardson, Executive Director to former Secretary of State Mike Pompeo, and Chairman of the Pompeo Foundation. Previously, he was the Director of the Office of Foreign Assistance at the Department of State and has decades in private and government service. Next, Max Primorac, a Senior Research Fellow at the Heritage Foundation's Margaret Thatcher Center for Freedom. Previously, he was the Acting Chief Operating Officer at USAID during the Trump administration. And finally, Charles Kinney, Senior Fellow at the Center for Global Development. Previously worked for the World Bank, focusing on anti-corruption relating to infrastructure and natural resources. In the report you authored, released in May 2022, called Congress Must Stop Biden's Misuse of U.S. Foreign Aid to Impose His Radical Social Agenda, and by the way, part of the fault has to come from Congress, who wanted him to do that, U.S. foreign aid has become an appendage of one political party seeking to advance its radical global agenda of ideological indoctrination. That's what you said. Can you elaborate what you meant by that?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, thank you for raising that issue. I think that Chairman Mike McCall of the House Foreign Affairs Committee put it well when he learned, for example, that the State Department was spending a massive amount of money, not only in the past but in the future, in strengthening its DEI structures within state. The same thing is over at USAID, and he commented how DEI is enforced. Now foreign aid and civil service officers must pledge allegiance to the DEI agenda or else risk not being promoted. One of my colleagues, formerly of USAID, looked at FEC, Federal Election Commission data regarding political contributions. And at the State Department and at the USAID, you're talking about 97, 94% to one party. When you're looking at the top contractors for USAID, and you're talking about companies that are earning billions of dollars, again, you look at their FEC contributions, it's almost 100%, and on and on and on. What this has done has really harmed our workforce, in which anybody who doesn't agree with this Marxist-inspired DEI and other radical ideology is not welcomed. So you basically have a one-party aid industrial complex, both in the bureaucracy, but also in the aid community. I'll just read to you really quickly. For instance, Interaction is a coalition of humanitarian aid organizations. Their DEI statement is that anti-blackness is rooted in white supremacy and refers to a white gaze, G-A-Z-E, that places people of color against a model of whiteness. You have another major coalition of aid, U.S. aid contractors talking about self-identity as Black, Indigenous, and people of color, BIPOC, women, genderqueer, non-binary, LGBTQIA plus, people with disabilities, and those from formerly or currently colonized countries. Basically, what this industry has told America, that if you are conservative, if you're Republican, if you're independent, you're a moderate Democrat, which is the vast majority of America, there's no place for you to work in this industry.
Can you discuss how the U.S. should be monitoring the works of public international organizations involved at our southern border? How do we ensure these PIOs are not working against U.S. interests? And can you give me examples where you think they are?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for that. I think the bottom line is that you have a lot of PIOs, a lot of the UN family organizations are providing billions of dollars in funding to NGOs to help migrants make the journey north. And obviously there's a lot of cash assistance, food support, but they are encouraging, in a way, the migration from the South. Obviously, that goes against, I think, what most Americans are looking for, which is a decrease. And in fact, it's against what even the Biden administration is saying, that they don't want these migrants to come. And yet we're continuing to fund the PIOs that ultimately are doing this. The challenge, as I mentioned in my statement, the challenge with working with PIOs, and the UN family in particular, is once you give the money, you almost lose all visibility and transparency and accountability. It goes into a big pot, and then the UN folks get to decide how and where to use it. Furthermore, as I mentioned in my statement, we don't currently vet PIOs or the people that they work with. So the money just goes to the UN organizations. We have no idea who these people are, who are ultimately getting these funds. We can't track it. We don't know if these organizations are attached to cartels or human smugglers. It'd be pretty smart if they were. Because obviously knowing the flow of resources and humans would be pretty interesting to human traffickers. But it's that type of challenge that we can't even solve because we don't have any visibility into what's happening.
Thank you. We're paying for our own noose.
Can you talk a little bit in this last minute about what it means to U.S. national security and U.S. prestige in the world, U.S. leadership in the world, this refusal of the United States to step up and defend a democracy that is fighting for its life against a brutal, criminal, gangster dictator in Vladimir Putin? What does that mean?
I'm an economist, not a national security expert, but I will say that I think the U.S. leadership in Ukraine really matters worldwide. It is of intense interest, as you say, to some of the United States' closest allies. I'd also say that Ukraine is spending this money really effectively and well. It has one of the world's best systems for spending money, Primorac. It's been universally admired. So the combination of it being a really important place to spend money and a really effective place to spend money.
What about the Inspector General who tried to find out about the debacle that happened in Afghanistan, was completely blocked from receiving information about what the United States spent their money doing, not just in the war, but in aid also? Do any of you have insight into that?
Well, I'd be willing to speak about the aid piece since the debacle. There was a recent report from the Inspector General that mentioned that $3 billion worth of cash disbursements in Afghanistan that they can't account for really where it went. Keep in mind, in order to have...
So that kind of matches what the gentleman was talking about, all this cash that disappeared under George Bush. So it's a rough business. Is that right?
Well, the biggest... Okay. The problem with Afghanistan is we don't have anybody on the ground. So there's absolutely no one on the ground to see where the money is going or to be able to verify with partners.
And there never was going to be anybody there, and they gave the $3 billion anyway.
They gave the $3 billion. Every year we've spent billions of dollars in Afghanistan, and as the Special Inspector General for Afghanistan Reconstruction has repeatedly explained to members of Congress that he cannot guarantee that we're not financing the Taliban.
Who is the largest organization that we think, NGO, that we pay money to encourage this sort of activity, at least in our southern border? Do any of you have any heads up on that, Mr. Richardson?
Well, the International Organization for Migration is one of the largest, again, a UN family organization. They're spending, I think it's $1.6 billion. They just stated they're looking to raise money in order to fund a myriad of nonprofits. As I said in my testimony, we have no idea who these people really are. We can't dive deep into making sure that these are the right types of people we should be providing. But beyond that, they are encouraging migration by making it
Illegal immigration or migration?
They are encouraging illegal immigration into the United States by funding and making it easier for people to make their way north.
Special processes call into question if a single objection is enough to stop aid. Is that true? If there's a single, if there's a single objection that there is a human rights violation, does that stop aid?
When there is an accusation of abuse or misuse of U.S. resources in the security space or in the development space, for that matter, you do have the ability to raise that, and that gets vetted throughout multiple processes.
Right, that's how it works, except for who? Except for what countries? Do you know?
I'm sorry, I don't, ma'am.
Except for Israel, Ukraine, and Egypt, except for those countries. Generally, units would stop receiving assistance immediately, but there's that important concern. So when does aid stop immediately? State Department says that aid should stop immediately if there's a problem. Does it?
It totally depends on the circumstances and situation.
Does it depend on the country that's getting the aid?
It also depends on the country receiving the aid, yes.
So what country does aid not stop immediately under Leahy?
I'd have to go back and look through my notes.
You don't know what country that is? It's only one in the entire world. Guess what? Except for Israel. So look, Congress has been told time and time and time again that the Leahy laws apply to everyone, to every country. And on paper, they do. But when we pull back the curtain, when we do some oversight, not all countries are being treated equally when the Leahy law is being implemented, especially our ally, Israel. Look, if Israel wants to be treated equally, which I'm for, then let's do it. Let's see the Israel-Leahy Vetting Forum standard operating procedure so that we can see exactly how it works, how it is different from other countries, and what would the Department of State would need to change to treat Israel equally.
Do you feel that the Biden administration has done a good job in conducting the oversight of this aid? Mr. Kennedy, you can go first. And just kind of a quick yes or no, and maybe a couple sentences.
I can't speak to the military aid. On the economic aid side, yes.
You think it is? Okay.
So across the board, I would say no, unfortunately.
No. Mr. Richardson?
No.
Look, it's hard to go back to your constituents who get up in the morning, pack a lunch, and head off to work to earn money to pay their bills, which they can't afford right now. And then this administration, the Biden administration, says, well, we need $65 billion to send to Ukraine. And our people are saying 60% of it, we don't know where in the hell it is. What's going on?
I can't speak to the specifics of what's exactly happening in Ukraine. This has all happened after I've left the administration. But I will say that there is a small contingent in Kyiv at the embassy that will be responsible for tracking of equipment. It clearly is completely insufficient, and as well as the processes that you would need to put in place in order to have appropriate tracking. These are mostly DoD personnel that would be responsible. It's very hard to get outside of Kyiv. Assuming you've been there, it's hard to get to the front and in order to do those types of tracking. But that's true across the spectrum, and also on the development side or the economic side. We do not have people, Americans or people that we trust, that can go and verify, because they are mostly kept captured in Kyiv and been unable to get out and see what is actually happening.
So the system that you described, is this something new, or is this a system that currently exists, or at least existed during this audit, this report, these findings?
So in Ukraine, this would have been based upon, ever since Putin launched his second attack during the Biden administration, this would have been unique to this circumstance. But I would say there's the challenge with foreign aid, the way you get to the most corruption, most waste of fraud and abuse is when you operate in non-permissive environments like Gaza, like Afghanistan, like Ukraine, where you can't get out and sort of do the monitoring and evaluation that is required in order to provide confidence into the system.
I mean, I got to tell you, your answer that, this is kind of the way it is, and it's not just this way with weapon systems, this way with economic aid, and
it's a real problem, sir.
And the other, it doesn't engender a lot of confidence that I should spend 6 cents or $6 or $60, let alone $65 billion of the people that I represent, my bosses. They're out there working their tails off and can't afford their electricity bills, can't afford their grocery bills, can't afford, a mortgage on a new home. And you're not selling me right now. I hate to tell you, you're not selling me.
What can we do to ensure that our efforts among these agencies are strategically aligned and coordinated to maximize the impact and efficiency?
Yeah, thank you for that statement and for the question. As you mentioned, there's over 20 federal government agencies responsible for foreign assistance. So we talk about USAID, state, MCC, DFC, but we've got Treasury out there, Commerce, Agriculture, Justice Department, DHS. They're all sort of operating in a complete stovetype manner, and it's supposed to be coordinated at the post. So it's supposed to be coordinated by the ambassador at a particular mission. The problem is it doesn't happen that way. And ultimately, the ambassador has lots of things they're focused on, and God bless them, they're doing a hard work, but the funding decisions about what types of programs are going to these posts are happening here in Washington. So you really need to centralize it, have a director of foreign assistance who's actually accountable, can bring all the foreign assistance agencies together, be very clear about what we're trying to accomplish, be clear that this is aligned to our national security goals, as you mentioned. How do we counter China? How do we bolster trade? How do we create prosperity here in America? And then making sure that the whole federal government is working together to achieve that.
Please explain to me how these NGOs are coordinating with Secretary Mayorkas and the Biden administration to continue with this illegal mass migration.
Yeah, you bet. The coordination is happening in two ways. The United States government, mostly through the State Department, but other avenues as well, will fund IOM, the International Organization of Migration. They, in turn, have a network of NGOs that they directly fund. And then, so these NGOs are getting funding directly from the State Department, USAID, Homeland Security, 20 other government agencies, most likely. Probably no one knows who's getting multiple U.S. government grants all at the same time. And then they're also being received funding from the UN. Obviously, the problem is that these organizations are encouraging and abetting illegal immigration into our country, which is, the Biden administration keeps saying that it's opposed to doing it, and yet continues to support organizations that are doing just that.
And FEMA also helps provide the dollars as well. What are these NGOs specifically doing to help illegal migrants once they cross into the U.S. or even as they travel up to the United States?
Congressman, what I would like to do to answer that question is to start in Central America, specifically where the root causes strategy, in which we're spending billions of dollars in order to prevent them from coming up in the first place. But when you start looking at what the programs are, for instance, it's a $50 million regional center to promote gender equity. There's one to promote intersex legal reforms. These are the kind of projects that we're pushing. And second, no matter how much we're going to spend in foreign aid in Central America or other places, when you look at the remittances that go back to Central America, you're talking a fact that tens of billions of dollars, so a factor of 20, 30, or 40 times more than the foreign aid that we're providing these countries. So it doesn't work. It's simply a waste of money. You need a strong border. That's what's going to prevent them from coming into the United States. But there's no incentive for these countries to reform economically as long as they see billions and billions of dollars coming in from remittances, whether they're legal or illegal immigrants.
Like Afghanistan, the USAID Inspector General testified in 2019 before the Appropriations Committee of the USAID. Their limitations in mitigating implemented risks have contributed to corrupt schemes across Iraq, Syria, and Africa. Can you tell us what tools we can use for USAID and the State Department to vet these contractors and grantees better?
Yeah, so there is a very limited vetting program for partners that's focused exclusively on terrorism and only in a certain number of countries, all in the Middle East. I would strongly argue that we really have to expand the vetting process, make sure that everyone that receives U.S. taxpayer dollars, we know who they are, but not just the main contract, right? So we'll submit a contract for $50 billion with an organization. They will then in turn give 50% of that to other folks. We need to know who those other folks are. We need to know who's actually implementing assistance on the ground and be able to track who these people are, how they are they bad actors, not just related to terrorism, but cartels, human traffickers, poachers. There's a whole host of folks who want to be inside our system, who could manipulate our system. The other thing I would say is when we talk about monitoring and evaluation, we really want to, what the development people are really telling you is that if I purchased an apple, you give me an apple. And that means we have success. Well, what's the goal? What are we trying to accomplish in that country, in that region, globally? And how does that apple add up to anything? We don't track that. That is the big missing middle in terms of our strategies. These countries, our host countries, our ambassadors, our teams will create lofty goals about what we are trying to do, and then every one of these little programs will do monitoring and evaluation that just proves that they are accomplishing something, but they're not actually proving that they're accomplishing a larger objective. And that for the next stage of monitoring and evaluation, I really encourage the Congress to pass legislation to really force the administration to align projects to actually strategic goals.
There are no further business. Without objection, the subcommittee stands adjourned.